Welcome to WJ Live, where we equip listeners with the truth. My name is Michael Austin, a reporter for the Western Journal. Today I'll be joined by Brian Chai, Joe Setyen, and Andrew J. Shasha. We'll talk about how wokeness is hurting the NBA in a big way, the WHO's recent enlightenment about the dangers of lockdowns, and the left's double standards when it comes to Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation hearings.
Well, guys, I think, please don't be alarmed, I think this is the first time the four of us have been on the podcast, so that's pretty cool. Let me just go and start, guys. I had a kind of a sick weekend. I took a long weekend, wasn't feeling too hot, so I ended up watching a lot of sports this weekend. Part of that involved the NBA Finals. And it's now Tuesday. Looking at the ratings for the finals, it's pretty grim for the National Basketball Association. According to Nielsen Media Research, Game 6 on Sunday night, which was the final game of the NBA Finals, only drew 5.6 million viewers, which, I mean, to be fair, that's a lot of viewers. But for comparison, last year's NBA Finals Game 6, which was also the clinching game, drew 18.34 million viewers. And if you want to go even further back than that, and this is a little unfair because this is kind of the peak of the NBA with Michael Jordan, Game 6 in the 98 Finals, I believe, drew 36.9 million viewers. So in about 22 years, the NBA has lost, in about 22 years, the NBA has lost 31-ish million viewers for NBA Finals. And I think it's pretty clear that a big reason for that is the hashtag Go Woke, Go Broke. They have fully embraced Black Lives Matter. You'll see all the messaging on the jerseys, on the court, and the ramifications are pretty tangible. So I guess the first thing I'll just kick it off to you guys is, do you guys think the NBA and sports in general, because sports ratings are down and kind of across the board, do you think the NBA and sports in general can bounce back from this rash of wokeness that has clearly affected ratings?
Well, it will, but the only reason it will is because people are just going to stop watching. So we've already seen it with the NBA. You just mentioned all of the stats and stuff, the number of people watching. Last year was a low year, and it's almost a quarter of what that was in terms of viewership. So people will stop watching. It's a business. Adam Silver has already said, the commissioner of the NBA, that they're going to get rid of the social justice messaging for next year. So people aren't going to watch, and they're going to stop doing all this crazy nonsense. So
now I want to somewhat challenge both of y'all's points.
Here we go.
There's no doubt that the NBA and the sports in general have gone with the woke social justice messaging, Black Lives Matter, all of that stuff. I don't know that is why ratings are down. If you look at all of the stuff that's going on, so take the NBA Finals, Game 6 on Sunday, right? You got baseball playoffs, you got Sunday Night Football, you got all this stuff that's going on around the same time as the NBA Finals. So I don't know that it's because they're going woke so much as the fact that the NBA is usually not having its finals in October. It's usually in June, when the only other sports on is, baseball, which there's 162 baseball games, so people are going to probably tune into the NBA Finals over a baseball game. I think that it has to do with, there's no fans in the stadium, which I think indirectly affects TV ratings in that it just makes for a less exciting game.
yeah.
But I haven't seen anything that's made me think the people who are boycotting the NBA are anything other than sort of a small percentage.
See, so I don't necessarily think, though, that it's necessarily the same folks that we're talking about, that the viewers that are bleeding out. I don't think it's necessarily the viewers that we're talking about are boycotting, that would describe themselves as boycotting. I think it's very possible, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, that I think the American people view sports and entertainment media as escapism. A lot of people, they come home from work and they just want to get lost in something that they can enjoy. They want to root for a sports team. They want to watch a good story. They don't want the divisiveness that they're seeing every day in their day-to-day lives and in the politics that they might or may not invest themselves in, kind of bleeding over into that. And we see that partisanship from the majority of polls, hyper-partisanship is increasing on both sides of the aisle. I think that with all of that divisiveness in politics, I think people want politics out of their sports and out of their entertainment. And whether or not they recognize it and actively go out and boycott, I think they still are kind of voting with their wallets on what they're watching. They're still saying, I'm a little bit less invested if I need to deal with all this nonsense.
So you're saying subconsciously they may just kind of tune out when they otherwise may have?
Yes.
I think that's, yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, sorry. I think you're half right. Like, definitely, I think it's probably even a bigger factor that it has to go up against football because NBA cannot compete with football.
Sunday
Just
Night
for a
Football,
quick aside,
yeah.
Sunday Night Football drew 11.4 million views, so more than
Yeah.
doubled. More than doubled the NBA on Sunday night.
And that's for, Vikings versus Seattle, where, Seattle's a pretty big market, but that's not a huge marquee matchup.
Nope.
That's not.
But clearly, we know from Kaepernick's whole stint back in like 2018 that social justice stuff has an effect on viewership. Like, we've seen it before. And the reason, when we see Adam Silver saying that he's going to take out social justice messaging from this stuff, that gives me some pretty good reason to think that they think the social justice messaging is pushing some people away. Now, it's probably much less of a factor than having to compete with football, but it's still an important factor, and it is. I do think it's driving people away, and they need to do everything they can because they're losing all sorts of money right now.
Yeah, and to slightly agree with Joe on one thing, that Game 6 on Sunday was not competitive at all. That game
No,
became
it
a
was
blowout really
terrible.
quickly. So,
Yeah.
I mean, even
And-
me, I watched the first quarter, and then as soon as it was like a 30-point lead, I was like, I'm watching
And that's
football.
another point to make. I mean, the NBA Finals were not a particularly good series. There's one or two good games, but nothing that was like, obviously Game 5 was very entertaining, but aside from that, it just wasn't all that competitive. There were some games that were good one way and some games that were, kind of blowouts the other way. Sort of back to what you said, Michael, in terms of Adam Silver, I think it also, you have to consider that he said, they're going to stop with the social justice messaging next year. Next year's not an election year. And they're also, you have to realize, obviously it's virtue signaling what they're doing this year, right? I don't debate that. Next year it's just not going to be in the news as much. So they're doing it now because it's a big issue and they know they can virtue signal and get some good press and some good headlines and good media attention. Next year, they're not going to care because it won't help them. So
Yeah, and I think it's really easy to give some credence to Joe's point. It is really easy to say we're going to take out the woke messaging the moment that we have another, and we inevitably will with the prevalence of cameras and the way that humans are humans. We're going to have another George Floyd-esque scenario. We've had more of these scenarios. We've had a number of these scenarios every couple of years for as long as I can remember. It is an inevitability that something is going to be recorded that the police may have mishandled or may just, the perception may not be there, and the league might act up again.
Yeah, I mean, it probably will happen.
Yeah.
Even if the police do act correctly, they're going to
Yes.
make a story out of it.
I mean, this goes back to Trayvon Martin, where LeBron James and his Heat teammates at the time,
Precisely.
made a big social justice
Yeah.
statement, and that was, I don't fact check me on it, 2011 or 2012. So
Yeah.
this is going back a good amount of time.
Yeah, it's pretty clear at this point that whatever the reasons are, leftism has clearly affected, sports, entertainment, other avenues. My last question for you guys, real quick. Do you guys think conservatives are doing a disservice by just, we're done, we're boycotting sports and entertainment and just kind of giving the lefties wins? Go on. Yes.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah.
I think the first mistake that we made was not getting involved in those institutions to begin with. Hollywood, academia, sporting. I mean, the conservative folks who were involved in all of those things were by and large silent, mostly because the left has always done what it's done from the 60s to now, whether it was the sexual revolution to all the things that we're dealing with now, the left is really good at painting you as a bigot or a jerk if you disagree with whatever the counterculture's newest oppression Olympics game is. And by being silent in the institutions that we were a part of, we have pretty much withdrawn anyway. So to now sit here and say we're going to boycott, I think it could be the biggest mistake we've ever made.
I agree.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, and we haven't been explaining why it's, as always, a problem with conservatism is the messaging, and we haven't really explained why Black Lives Matter is a bad thing.
Yep.
40% of the country, I think, does not have an opinion one way or the other on Black Lives Matter. So I think when they see conservatives crying about the Black Lives Matter messages on the court, they have no idea what the problem is. Yep. So,
and I mean, it'd be nice for us to be able to get out and spread that message. Unfortunately, right now, we really can't because we're all cooped up. Turns out being cooped up is a bad thing. And Mike, I'll let you take over from there.
Yeah, so since back in April, maybe even a little bit sooner than that as far as I can tell, conservatives, the Western Journal, a lot of different outlets, and a lot of different personalities have been very against the lockdowns. We've understood that the medical experts are not the only experts that you need to hear from, and we've seen that the economic fallout from lockdowns can cause a huge amount of damage. So it's not just, oh, we're saving COVID lives, that makes it good. They've been bad. And now finally, the WHO has come out against the lockdowns. As far as in July, the WHO was saying that full lockdowns were the only option. But now they do not advocate lockdowns as a primary means of controlling this virus. They cite economic fallout, global recession, poverty. But, in May, we did a story covering a CNN story. And then we also interviewed a economist who talked about all the different externalities that could happen from a lockdown. And we know hundreds of thousands of deaths. As far as the world stage, a global recession could put like 500,000 people in poverty, I believe the number was. So my question to you guys is, the left always reverts to the argument of, well, we just need to listen to the experts. Just believe the experts. We're seeing now why that's not a good idea. The WHO has reversed course. The CDC has reversed course on whether lockdowns are good or not, slightly. And we've known this from the beginning because we actually listened to all the experts, not just the experts from the CDC and the WHO. So what do you guys think about the experts' argument, and what are the fallacies of that?
Well, I think it does come down to you should listen to the experts with a critical eye. You should never take anyone for their word just because they have expert or doctor or whatever in their headline, in their title. They may very well know what they're talking about. They may have an agenda. They may have something. I mean, CNN has this guy, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who is an expert, but he also works for CNN, and he has a narrative, and CNN has a narrative that they're trying to push. So it takes a nuanced view, I think, to look at what all the experts are saying, like what you said, and to kind of make your own conclusions based off of that. Now, the World Health Organization, as you said, I think has done a really poor job in general. They say they have been saying, for months that lockdowns are not the best thing, that they're not the primary means to stop COVID. They haven't, publicized that until just recently, because I think they're inept and incompetent at messaging and most other things. But yeah, the left doesn't want us. The left only wants you to listen to some experts. They only want you to listen to the experts they agree with. So you have to take a view of all the experts, including the ones you like and the ones you don't like.
And you have to take into account the experts who are not medical experts. I know people don't like to hear that, but from the beginning we were hearing, like you said, from economists and from public policy experts and even mental health experts who were saying these lockdowns were going to hurt everyday Americans. And we had people like Dr. Fauci saying And reasonably so, as much as people would like to give him trouble, and I like to give him trouble on quite a few things, he was saying, I am not the only opinion in the room. If I'm the only opinion, my opinion is that we should take the medical advice and lock down. I'm not the only opinion in the room. But because CNN had that narrative, and the left has this narrative that we should be locking down, they were willing to say, no, I just want to hear from Fauci. I just want to hear from medical experts who agree with me, because...
It's an echo chamber.
Yeah.
And some of the experts we've heard from are even just medical doctors that just treat patients, and they have no expertise. There's no way that they should have any sort of opinion on how we deal with like a global epidemic.
Going off what Joe had said about, we should listen to experts with a critical eye.
Yes.
I also think we need to be more vocal. We need to organize better because, it's great that the WHO says this now, but the damage has been done.
Yeah.
Like, people's lives are legitimately just ruined, like not recoverable. And it's not even just the economic fallout, which I know is mostly what that report cites, but it's also just, mental well-being. Like human beings aren't meant to be cooped up at home, 7 days a week, 24/7. And it's just one of those situations where I wish there had been, well, let me phrase that. I'm not sure what we could have done exactly, but something should have been done sooner to either combat the WHO's, authoritarian narrative that we have to lock down, or something along those lines, because, man, my heart goes out to all those people who, small businesses just years built up, just closed forever. That's
Devastated.
awful. Yeah.
And for those that don't know, the effects of this lockdown, it's not just from the economic fallout. And a lot of this is related to that, but not all of it. For example, I think as of May, we had the University of London had estimated that the U.S. will have upwards of 33,000 deaths from patients who aren't getting cancer treatments. So because they wanted to keep the hospital capacity down, and what ended up happening was there was like no one in the hospitals. So those people couldn't get treated. There were higher rates of heart attacks, depression, suicides, drug abuse, all this stuff. So
Divorce rates, too, I think.
yeah, divorce rates way up. Domestic violence, for example, the left.
As to be expected.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should have seen that coming. And
Yeah.
some people did, and other people's did and just didn't care.
So now that we know now that we have this, we've had the information for a long time, but now that the WHO agrees, the CDC, I don't know if they've said lockdowns are bad, but they have said that we should open schools because the director, Redfield, said that the suicide rate for teens was skyrocketing because schools weren't open. So he's saying schools should be open. So now that we know all of that, we have all that information. Now the organizations that the left stands behind so proudly have come out against it. Do you think we're going to see a reduction in lockdowns, or do you think they're just going to stand pat?
Well, now they're just in the pocket of Trump.
Yeah.
All those organizations.
Uh,
The WHO.
Yeah, I'm yeah. Andrew's right. Also, I don't think we're going to see any of that because I'm just going to focus because I used to live there for so long. The situation in California, like Gavin Newsom, it's the whole adage of absolute power corrupts absolutely. And as soon as Gavin Newsom had a chance to grab some power because of the coronavirus lockdowns, didn't he tweet out last week, or his office tweeted out something about putting your mask on between bites when you're out at a restaurant?
Come on now.
Which
that is,
experts say, don't do that.
that is absolutely asinine, and it is just insane to me that that's what these people in power are trying to do. So I don't think they care what the experts say because they had that power now, and they're not letting go.
Yeah.
I will say, unfortunately, it's become so politicized, and I think this is on both sides, that people don't care about the actual policy. They don't care. On one side, they don't care about saving lives. They just want to be anti-Trump. And then I think there is an extent to which some conservatives on the other side also do not care about the actual unconstitutional nature, un-American nature of these lockdowns. They just want to be anti-left. So we really have to take a view of this that is not political, because this shouldn't be a political issue. It should be an issue about freedom and public health and sort of balancing these things to protect people's rights while also protecting public health. But it has become about whether you're pro-Trump or whether you're anti-Trump.
Yeah. And everything is getting politicized now to an insane degree. The left is just on full attack mode, and you see that not just from all this lockdown stuff, this anti-scientific rhetoric they have where they only listen to certain experts, but you see it with the way they're treating ACB right now, Amy Coney Barrett.
Yes, Amy Coney Barrett, Judge Barrett, is on Capitol Hill this week for her confirmation hearings before the Senate Judiciary Committee, and as to be expected, the left is looking for any venue of attack, any avenue of attack that they can find. And, for example, yesterday, the liberal outlet Slate decided to attack her for being a careerist. And you can see that tweet up on your screen right now. It says, Barrett has established who she is, a shameless careerist who believes nobody can stop her. And then I'm going to read a little bit from the story because it just kind of goes on to say, what's wrong with Barrett isn't that she's too pious or that she's submissive in her personal life. It's that she's bent on making herself one of the 9 most powerful judges in the country, even if she has to do it in the most graspingly partisan and destructive way possible. So you can see the double standard here, right? Amy Coney Barrett is a conservative woman, and she's a Christian. She's also an accomplished judge who has balanced being a mom, being a wife, and being a judge. For a while, she was a law school professor. She has balanced all of those things. That should be the feminist ideal. That's what the left and feminists told women, this is what you should look up to balancing your career and your family. But they hate her because they don't actually care about that stuff. They don't care about equality. When Clarence Thomas was up for being nominated for the Supreme Court, the left should have been thrilled. He was a very well-qualified black man who was going up for a Supreme Court seat. And instead, as he said, they imposed a high-tech lynching, in his words, because they didn't like that he was a conservative. So the left, the people at Slate, the people in the media, Democratic politicians, they're exposing themselves as just hypocrites and frauds because they should like Barrett. They should like her for being just a great example of what women can aspire to be. But she does not pass the leftist litmus test because she is A, a Christian, and B, she's a constitutional originalist. So they call her a careerist, and they slam her just because these unforgivable sins she has of, loving God and loving the Constitution.
I think this is the most despicable thing I've seen from the left in a long time, and a lot of people who know me know that the Kavanaugh hearings absolutely galvanized my conservatism in college, but this is beyond the pale because we have heard for so long from the left that conservatives hate women, that we live in an oppressive male tyranny or a patriarchy, and that women should be able to have it all. They should be able to have a career and children and a family, and that we should be proud for women to get together and to do those things, and we should be lifting up all women, believing all women, supporting all women in their endeavors. The idea that now we're going to say this woman who has it all is evil for trying to elevate her career, and I understand the idea that it might be at the expense of her children. Oh, the claim that, yes, she will have to withdraw a little bit from her family, probably for one of the most important jobs in the American democracy, or republic, sorry. But the idea that it's going to destroy her family, given their arguments for decades that liberated women don't destroy their families, they make things better. They bring in a different income, and they give their female children and their male children a great role model for what men and women can be because there is equality.
The one thing I will say about this is I have no idea who they're trying to win over with this argument. Because as a former just passionate progressive, I can tell you that the progressives are going to hate this. And obviously there's going to be a small portion of people that are just going to hate ACB no matter what, and they're going to latch on to whatever argument is given to them. But mainstream progressives are going to see this as blatant sexism. Conservatives are going to see this as blatant sexism. The center left, who the left really needs to galvanize, is going to see this as deceptive and sexist. And it's a ridiculous argument, and they're going to alienate more people than they're going to gain if they continue with these sorts of points.
And I mean, that's really a silver lining of it is, one, like Mike said, it'll alienate a bunch of people they should be galvanizing. Excuse me. The other is it really kind of brings to the forefront the sheer hypocrisy of, far leftism. They don't. It's the cause of the month, cause of the week, whatever. That's what they're focused on. They have no long-term mission. They have no long-term vision. It is whatever their feelings, whatever they're feeling in the moment. That's what they're going to rage against. And I think the ACB confirmation hearings in particular should really, really bring that to light. That like you guys, all you guys have already said, that there's no reason for them to do this. This should be a slam dunk success story that they should be touting, but instead they're trying to tear her down, and it's just.
There is a reason. There is a reason they're doing it, and it's because they are afraid of what she's going to do on the court. So they're terrified of abortion going away, of Obamacare going away, all those things. So I think that's actually what Andrew's talking about.
That's
next.
actually what I wanted to bring to the table. Was yesterday, like you said, she's on the Hill this week for her confirmation hearings. Opening statements were yesterday, which means that she came before the committee, the Senate Judiciary Committee, with her own opening statement, and members of the committee also had their opening statements. Now, in those opening statements, we saw from primarily only the Democratic members, but a significant handful, particularly Cory Booker and vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris, that the argument against Barrett has strongly been that she will overturn Roe v. Wade, which is they would like to call it the constitutional right to an abortion. That's not really what it was. It's the constitutional right to privacy that in that specific case guards the privacy you have between a woman and her doctor to discuss such a procedure. That she will overturn Obergefell, which is the gay marriage ruling on similar grounds, and then Sebelius versus NFIB, which is the ruling on the Affordable Care Act that upheld it and largely kind of reconstructed it or protected it through a pretty strange legal grounds, basing the individual mandate on not a tax, but a penalty, which kind of keeps the law in place. Now we're going to show you Cory Booker and Kamala Harris's statements on those cases and why they're important and why Amy Coney Barrett is a threat to those cases or invoking those cases.
We're here because in the middle of a deadly pandemic, in the middle of an ongoing election, Senate Republicans have found a nominee in Judge Barrett who they know will do what they couldn't do, subvert the will of the American people and overturn the ACA and overturn Roe v. Wade. That's what this is about. That's why we're here. It's very simple. Senate Republicans know the American people don't want this, but they don't care because they have only one small window of opportunity to work the system, betray what the American people want. And so they're desperately rushing to complete this process before America starts voting, but they don't have to do this. If one of my colleagues will stand up on this committee, we can hold this over until after an election. If two of my colleagues on the Senate floor agree with their other two colleagues, Republicans, we can stop this. Otherwise, this is a charade when they say this is a normal Judiciary Committee hearing for a Supreme Court nomination. There's nothing about this that's normal.
Throughout our history, Americans have brought cases to the United States Supreme Court in our ongoing fight for civil rights, human rights, and equal justice. Decisions like Brown versus Board of Education, which opened up educational opportunities for Black boys and girls. Roe versus Wade, which recognized a woman's right to control her own body. Loving v. Virginia and Obergefell v. Hodges, which recognized that love is love and that marriage equality is the law of the land. The United States Supreme Court is often the last refuge for equal justice when our constitutional rights are being violated.
Okay, so it's essentially the supposed argument is that she is going to be a threat to these major cases. Now, as an originalist, her judicial philosophy is that the U.S. Constitution, the ancillary documents provided by the Founding Fathers, and the previous case law, stare decisis, the precedents on the table are they are the highest value for deciding a case, which means that, as Scalia has said, her mentor, and as she has said today and yesterday before the committee, it doesn't matter what she personally believes. What matters is what has come before and what is in the Constitution. That is how she will rule. But they've decided that the cases are the main problem. So do you guys really believe that with one more conservative appointed justice on the Supreme Court, that those cases will be overturned? Roe, Obergefell, and Sebelius?
Absolutely not. None of them are going away. Take them kind of one at a time. Roe was decided by a conservative majority court, right?
Yes.
Now there's been almost 50 years since then, and it's still not gotten away. It's still not gone away. I don't think it's going away anytime soon because the court has had a chance to do that, on multiple occasions if they wanted to. One more conservative nominated justice is not going to change that. And it really highlights, like you said, just the importance of judicial precedent. The Supreme Court, it takes so much for them to overturn a precedent that has already been set by a prior court, a prior Supreme Court ruling. They're not going to get rid of Roe v. Wade. With the gay marriage ruling, that I think conservatives would argue was, ruled wrongly, worded poorly. The reasoning was bad, but no one is saying, at least no one on the Supreme Court is suggesting that they're going to make gay marriage, they're going to take away the right to gay marriage anymore. If anything, they may revisit that ruling to make sure that religious freedom is addressed and that, religious people don't have, they can do what, their religion tells them to do, what their faith says. I think that whether you like it or not, once a court or once anyone gives people rights, like the right to an abortion, which is not a right at all, in my opinion, or the right to gay marriage, then, especially in America, that's not going away. In America, if you look at the history of our country, we don't generally take away rights after they've been given.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the Sebelius ruling, that is so, just the left is lying to you so badly on that. And by you, I mean just the people in general, right? They're trying to tell you that, she said in a 2017 law review article that what the Roberts Court decided, which was that Obamacare, the individual mandate, was a tax, not a penalty, he said that was constitutional. She said, no, that's terrible reasoning, which it was. But that tax or penalty or whatever you want to call it is gone now.
Yes.
It's a moot point. The case that's coming before the Supreme Court pretty soon in November or December has to do with severability, which is a whole different issue. It's whether, without the individual mandate, whether Obamacare can stand. Mm-hmm. I think the court's probably going to rule that it can because people have pointed out a lot of flaws in the arguments that the states who are suing, who are suing Obamacare and the Trump administration is making. So, kind of to sum up, all three of those rulings are not going away. Leftists are lying. They're trying to galvanize the base by taking nuanced issues and making them seem simple when they're really not.
I mean, it's hard to really cover those bases better than Joe did. That was pretty in-depth there, Joe. Impressive. But one thing I will add to that is I agree with Joe. I don't think anything's getting overturned. I think all that, the fear over Roe and all those other ones, is fear-mongering from the left, like Joe said there.
Yeah.
But I think their genuine fear is whatever role ACB might play in a potential, disputed election. Like, I think that's, and they don't want to talk about it as much because they don't want to give oxygen to, Trump saying mail-in ballot or touting mail-in ballot issues. But I think that's a genuine fear for them. This is all just fear-mongering, all the other stuff.
And as much as they say that ACB is going to be the key to overturning Roe, she hasn't even vocalized that that's what her opinion would be. We really don't know. She's suggested that she's kind of on the fence, or maybe even she would not overturn it, but we just have no idea. And she's she's a originalist. She has principles, unlike all the people the left wants to appoint. Mm-hmm. So we can't count on her pro-life views to be the deciding factor in how she makes a ruling.
Which is a good thing.
Yes.
Yes. We're all pro-life here.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that you can take especially on the Supreme Court, it doesn't mean that you can rule the way you want just because you believe something. Regardless of how terrible abortion is, which it is a barbaric, murderous practice, you can't just say, well, I'm not pro-abortion. I'm
Yeah.
not pro-abortion, so I'm going to make it illegal on the Supreme Court. You can do that from the legislature,
Of course you can.
from Congress, from wherever as a lawmaker, but that's not the job of the Supreme Court.
And that's exactly what the judge said today before the Judiciary Committee in a conversation with Senator Cornyn, that essentially his discussion with her was about exactly that topic. The idea that she said, I could institute a court of Amy, right? I could do that. That is not what the Constitution calls for. That's not what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Not even my children would want to live in that court. I mean, this is a woman who is very lucid, who is very intellectual. She knows her stuff. She went before the committee today with no notes for hours of questions.
She was
by every
impressive.
it was incredibly
Yeah.
impressive. Now, something that does point out, however, this kind of conversation where instead of attacking her on the merits, they're going to attack her on her person, and they're going to attack her on the public policy values they believe she will institute or withhold. And that is an incredibly revealing thing. And I think I want to pose to you guys that might be why we're even having these hearings. I've said before, I thought this timeline was incredibly slow. I think that they shouldn't have left it until essentially 3 weeks before the election to get this underway, or 4 weeks before the election to get this underway. They should have started days after the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I mean, of course, her family is in mourning, and I pray for them. Everyone wants to love on them, but they should have moved forward with filling this seat before an election. The timeline was too slow. But it does show, having these hearings, that the left wants to have these litmus tests. They want to have these activist judges on the court, and it reveals that they don't care about the precedent. They don't care about anything other than the results. For them, the court is just another arm of the legislative branch, and it's just another arm of the way that they can see policy done. And I guess I want to pose to you guys, is the point of these hearings just to have the left on record as showing that they have absolutely no value for the impartiality of the court?
Yes, and I think that's the point of Supreme Court confirmation hearings in general. Obviously, everyone kind of knows what they need to know about Amy Coney Barrett. I think, obviously, you need to have hearings. It's good to have it in public. But it's just a chance to grandstand for everyone. You know, it's a chance to be pro-ACB or anti-ACB. But it's all show. I mean, everyone knows what she stands for already.
Yeah.
No one is going to change their mind, at least on the Senate, based off of these hearings. It's just a chance for them to show how much they hate her.
Yeah.
All right. I couldn't have said it better myself, Joe. That's all we have for you guys today. But before we leave, I do want to say first and foremost, thank you for watching. Secondly, I have really exciting news, guys. WJ Live is officially on Apple Podcasts. So please, please, please subscribe. And if you wouldn't mind, leave a 5-star review. That'd be a big help for us. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day.